There is a quiet kind of power that lives in the ordinary, in how you wake, in how you breathe, in how you move through the world without needing to be seen, yet seen by everything. And the path of self-mastery is not paved with grand moments. It is carved by repetition, by intention, by presence. And if a woman wishes to rise, not in noise, but in depth, there are 10 habits she must quietly master. Wake before the world demands you. The first victory of the day is to rise before the world calls your name. In this silence, you meet yourself, not through a screen, not through the needs of others, but in your own breath. Before the noise, this is where your clarity lives. Move the body, still the mind. Even the strongest tree must sway to remain unbroken. Whether it is stretching, walking, or conscious breath, motion clears stagnation. And in that movement, your mind learns to be still, not empty, but calm. Drink water like a ceremony. This habit is not just physical, it is energetic. Water remembers. When you drink slowly, intentionally, you tell your body it is sacred. You shift from consumption to connection. Eat for energy, not emotion. There is wisdom in knowing when hunger is physical and when it is emotional. A woman who listens to her body does not numb with food, she nourishes with it. She chooses fuel, not distraction. Guard your first hour. What enters your mind first sets the rhythm. Do not hand that power to algorithms or drama. Read something that elevates. Write something that clarifies. Sit with yourself before the world sits on you. Speak less, mean more. Mastery lives in the pause. In choosing words like seeds. You don't have to be loud to be heard. Your energy precedes you. Let your presence speak before your voice ever does. Keep your space sacred. Your environment reflects your internal state. Clean not just for order, but for mental peace. A tidy room becomes a calm mind. And every act of cleaning is a ritual of respect for your own life. Reflect before you sleep. A day passed unconsciously is a lesson missed. Sit quietly before bed and ask, what did I learn today? What drained me? What restored me? In these answers, you realign with your path. Do one thing slowly. In a world addicted to speed, slowness is rebellion. Make tea without rushing. Fold clothes while breathing deeply. Walk without headphones. To do one thing slowly is to reclaim your soul from distraction. Protect your yes with boundaries. Your time is not infinite. Your energy is not free. Learn to say no, not from fear, but from wisdom. A woman who guards her yes becomes unshakable in her purpose. There is a sacred silence that exists just before the world opens its eyes. It is the space between night and noise, between the unseen and the expected. And in this space, a woman can remember who she is, without distraction, without comparison, without performance. When you rise before the world begins to pull at you, you reclaim a part of your life that is often surrendered without resistance. This is not about waking early for productivity or hustle. This is about awakening before the external world places its weight on your shoulders. It is about meeting your inner world before being absorbed into the outer one. In early hour, there is no pressure to be anything other than still. The energy is different. The demands are still sleeping. The timelines haven't started. The messages haven't arrived. There's a purity to that hour that cannot be faked later in the day. And in that purity, your thoughts are honest. The feelings that surface are unmasked. You do not wake up into someone else's expectations. You rise into your own presence. That presence is where your center lives. That presence is the ground beneath all your choices. It does not shout. It whispers. And only those who rise early enough can hear it. When you claim the early hour as your own, you take back what the world constantly tries to own. Your focus, your pace, your breath. You don't wake up reacting. You wake up creating. You create space for clarity before confusion enters. You create space for gratitude before comparison sneaks in. You create space for intention before obligation. And the woman who leads herself before being led by the world becomes unshakable in her direction. This habit is not just physical, it is spiritual. Waking early is not about being perfect, it is about being present. It teaches you that you are capable of choosing yourself before choosing anyone else. It reminds you that your day is not something to survive, it is something to shape. And in shaping that first hour, you shape your thoughts, your energy, your rhythm. Over time, this becomes a ritual, and rituals, when done with reverence, transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. The quietness of the early hour is not empty. It is full of wisdom, full of possibility, full of messages that you can only hear when the world is still asleep. In that stillness, you remember your power, not because you are doing more, but because you are becoming more aware. You begin to see how everything that controls you is external, and everything that liberates you is internal. The soft light of dawn becomes more than light. It becomes a teacher. It teaches you how to receive the day instead of chasing it. It teaches you how to ground yourself in being rather than lose yourself in doing. To rise before the world is to trust that your peace matters more than your performance. It is an act of defiance in a world that profits from your distraction. But it is also an act of devotion to yourself, to your path, to your inner knowing. When a woman gives herself the gift of her own undivided attention, even if only for a few moments each morning, she sends a message to life itself that she is not here to be consumed, she is here to be conscious. And consciousness begins in the space where the world has not yet spoken. That is the hour when your soul has the microphone. That is the hour when the noise hasn't drowned out your intuition. That is the hour when you remember not what you must do, but who you are. No alarms, no scrolling, no rushing, just breath, just stillness, just you. That moment belongs to no one else, not your past, not your fears, not your calendar, only to you. And in that moment, you are reminded of a truth most forget. Peace is not something you wait for. It is something you wake up into. The body holds stories the mind has not yet translated. Every tension, every ache, every tightness is a whisper from within, asking for attention, asking for breath. In stillness, the mind often races, but when the body moves, the mind begins to quiet. This is the paradox most overlook, that sometimes you must move in order to become still. The woman who understands this does not exercise for approval or image or pressure. She moves to return to herself. She moves to meet herself where words cannot reach. There is an ancient intelligence in the body. It remembers what the mind forgets. And when you move gently, intentionally, rhythmically, you give those forgotten pieces space to be released. This is not about intensity. It is about intimacy. Intimacy with your breath, your posture, your presence. In a world that rushes, this kind of movement becomes meditation. It is not about miles or calories or mirrors. It is about realignment. It is about feeling the energy shift when you stretch a little deeper, when you breathe a little slower, when you arrive fully in your own skin. There are movements that release anger, movements that invite joy, movements that unlock tears long held behind clenched jaws and tight shoulders. A woman who moves with awareness becomes fluent in the language of the body. She no longer waits for clarity to arrive through thought alone. She listens to how her body wants to flow. Some days it will want strength, some days it will want softness. Some days it will ask for stillness within motion, and the more she honors that request, the more peace she finds. This daily habit is not about becoming better. It is about becoming balanced. When the body is stagnant, so is the mind. When you sit for too long, think for too long, scroll for too long, you forget the groundedness that only comes through sensation. Moving the body returns you to this earth, this moment, this breath. It humbles you, it reminds you that despite all the stories your mind spins, your body is always here, always honest, always now. There is power in walking with awareness, in stretching without urgency, in dancing without an audience. These are not acts of leisure, they are acts of reconnection. A woman who gives herself time each day to move learns that peace is not passive. It is something you generate. It is something you cultivate through repetition, through rhythm, through reverence for the vessel you live in. And that reverence changes everything. You do not move to fix yourself, you move to feel yourself more deeply. You move to remember that your body is not a machine, it is a messenger. In a culture obsessed with mental dominance, the quiet wisdom of the body often goes unheard. But when you allow yourself to move, not for a goal, but for grace, you awaken an ancient strength. The kind that doesn't come from force, but from flow. And in that flow, you release what you were never meant to carry. You make space, not just in your muscles, but in your mind. You create room for new thoughts to arise, for fresh energy to enter, for deeper stillness to root itself within you. Each step, each breath, each stretch becomes a ceremony. A way of acknowledging, I am here. I am listening. I am home. And in that home, there is peace. Not because the world is quiet, but because you have chosen to become the stillness within the storm. There is a quiet wisdom in the simplest acts, and what is among the most ancient of them. It does not shout, it does not demand, it simply flows, adaptable, resilient, clear. A woman who drinks water with intention is not just nourishing her body, she is reconnecting with a deeper rhythm. In a world where everything is rushed, even the sacred becomes mechanical. Hydration turns into a task, a check mark on a wellness list, a hurried sip between meetings. But when you shift your awareness, when you pause, to feel the coolness, to hear the pour, to notice the sensation of each swallow, something transforms. Water carries memory. It responds to energy. Science confirms what ancient traditions always knew, that the structure of water changes in the presence of intention. When you drink in silence with gratitude, your body receives more than hydration, it receives harmony. Your cells, your organs, your nervous system, all of it tunes itself to the vibration you offer. If you rush the act, you miss the ritual. But if you honor it, the act becomes sacred. It is not just about quenching thirst. It is about entering into agreement with the element that makes up most of who you are. A woman who learns to treat water as more than liquid learns to treat herself as more than flesh. She does not gulp. She does not numb. She does not reach for stimulants before she has first reached for the source. She wakes and drinks, not with distraction, but with devotion. That first glass of water in the morning is not a habit, it is a reset. It tells your body, we begin again. It cleanses the night, it awakens the organs, it softens the mind. It reminds you that before coffee, before chaos, before conversation, there is clarity. And clarity comes through flow. You do not need to be a healer to infuse your water with peace. You do not need to be a mystic to understand what presence means. You simply need to remember that your body listens. It absorbs not only what you consume, but how you consume it. When your energy is scattered, your digestion is scattered. When your thoughts are loud, your body tenses. But when you slow down, when you hold the cup like it matters, when you drink like you are receiving, not grabbing, something in you changes. The experience is no longer about getting through it. It becomes about being in it. Water reminds you of softness. It reminds you of strength. It reminds you that both can live in the same space. When poured into a glass, it takes the shape of the glass. When poured into your body, it takes the shape of your intention. If you drink it while thinking of what you lack, it rushes through you. If you drink it while rooted in gratitude, it lingers where it's needed most. The act of drinking then becomes a meditation, not an escape from the moment, but a return to it. And in that return, you meet yourself again. No matter where you are, no matter what season you're in, water remains your companion. It is the first medicine, the first purifier, the first mirror. And the way you treat it is often the way you treat your life. Do you rush it? Do you forget it? Do you take it only when in crisis? Or do you approach it daily, slowly, reverently? These questions reveal more than habits, they reveal awareness. And awareness is the beginning of change. To drink water like a ceremony is to honor the life force that sustains you. It is to make the mundane holy. It is to say, even in this small act, I am awake. I am not going through the motions. I am moving through this moment with care. And when care becomes your default, when mindfulness becomes your rhythm, even something as ordinary as water becomes an anchor to your body, an anchor to the part of you that remembers you were never meant to rush. You were meant to feel, to receive, to return. Eat for energy, not emotion. Explained in detail, Shi Heng Yi style, no subheadings, no ending. There is a subtle moment that arises before every meal, every craving, every bite. It is the space between feeling and feeding. Most overlook this moment. Most rush past it, filling hunger not with nourishment but with distraction. But the woman who slows down enough to notice this space begins to understand something powerful. Food is not just fuel, and eating is not just survival. It is a dialogue between your body and your inner state. And in that dialogue, your level of awareness determines whether you are feeding your life or feeding your patterns. The body hungers for energy, but the emotions often hunger for escape. And if you do not know which voice is speaking, you begin to use food as a way to silence discomfort, a sweet taste to numb stress, a heavy meal to ground anxiety, a constant snacking to avoid stillness. There is no shame in these habits, they are human. But when repeated unconsciously, they become chains. The very act that should energize begins to drain. The nourishment turns into noise. The body becomes confused. You are full, but not fed. Satisfied, but not stable. Fed, yet fatigued. To eat for energy is not about control. It is about connection. A woman connected to her own rhythm knows how to listen before she reaches. She knows how to ask, am I truly hungry? Or am I avoiding a feeling I don't want to face? And in that pause, she finds power. She does not use food to distract, she uses it to align. Every choice on her plate becomes a reflection of how she wants to feel, not just in her body, but in her mind, in her breath, in her presence. She chooses food that wakes her up, not weighs her down. She chooses meals that sharpen her focus, not dull her senses. When you eat with intention, the entire experience changes. You chew slower, you breathe deeper, you taste more. You realize that the act of feeding is not only about biology, it is about presence. Each bite becomes a moment to return to the now, not scrolling, not rushing, not numbing, but arriving. Arriving in your senses, arriving in your choices, arriving in your body as it is. Not to punish it, not to perfect it, but to partner with it. That partnership is sacred. And the foods you choose become symbols of that relationship. The body speaks in whispers. A heaviness after certain foods is not just a physical signal. It's a message. A sudden burst of craving after emotional discomfort is not weakness. It's a mirror. When you learn to read these signs, you no longer fall into the trance of emotional hunger. You no longer mistake a moment of sadness for a reason to overconsume. You no longer let stress dictate your appetite. You begin to separate the voice of the soul from the voice of the wound. One asks for clarity. The other begs for comfort. And while both are valid, only one leads you to strength. Eating for energy requires honesty, not restriction, not guilt, but a quiet truthfulness with yourself. How do I feel after this food? Do I feel clearer or clouded? Do I feel supported or sedated? These are not questions of calories. They are questions of consciousness. And consciousness cannot be faked. It can only be cultivated through repetition, through reflection, through reverence for what your body is asking for. When your intention is to energize, your body begins to respond in kind. Your digestion improves. Your thoughts sharpen. Your emotions stabilize. You stop chasing balance and start embodying it. Food is a rhythm, a ritual, a response, but above all it is a relationship. And how you eat reflects how you care, not just for your appearance, but for your vitality, for your clarity, for your presence in this world. You do not need to follow extremes. You need to follow awareness. Awareness turns a simple meal into a form of self-respect. It reminds you that every bite is a choice, not a punishment, not a reward, but a decision to either support your life or suppress your truth. There is nothing wrong with comfort, but even comfort must be conscious. When you eat with awareness, comfort no longer becomes a trap, it becomes a tool. You learn how to hold space for your emotions without silencing them with sugar. You learn how to meet your stress without sedating it with stimulants. You learn how to feed your future, not just your feelings, and in doing so, you return to the real purpose of food, not as escape, but as energy. Not as reaction, but as realignment. not as filler, but as fuel for the woman you are becoming.